go over a couple of the problems from your quiz from yesterday to help you with your test today. You cannot use these, and you cannot use any notes on your quiz. Yesterday you took these and I gave you some answers. I do need to say something about number 3 on your quiz. I'll say something about this one first. There was a mistake on the answers that I gave you. Let's look at this together. It's got a picture and it's got a parallelogram, A, B, C, D, and it does have the diagonals drawn in. I told you the correct answer was A. That is not correct, so if you got it wrong, go back and look at what you had to start with. When they give you some information such as angle CDA congruent to, and then they have a blank here. Complete this statement. Angle CDA, and if you'll follow from C to D to A and highlight that angle, and here's a hint, some of you are still having a hard time with finding what angle this is. At this point in the semester, you really should not be having a hard time with this. If you are, though, this middle letter is very important. This middle letter is the vertex of that angle. You go from C through D, end up at A, but your focus is that middle letter. Okay, so get it right on the test. That's the angle that they're giving you right there. Okay. Is congruent to what other angle if this is a parallelogram? And if we're talking about this angle here, what do you know about a parallelogram? Opposite angles are congruent. So your angle that you're looking at up here is this one with the letter B in the middle. And then we can go from A through B to see which angle we're talking about. Now go to your answers. The two that you can mark out are answer B and answer D because those have the wrong angles listed. Answer A and answer C are the ones that have angle ABC on there. Okay, so take a look at the explanation. A says ABC because alternate interior angles are congruent. C says because opposite angles at a parallelogram are congruent. So take a look, this one and this one, those are not alternate interior angles, those are opposite. So your answer is C. The answer key was wrong. So if you're wondering about that one, it was a mistake on the answer key. Opposite angles is what we're looking at. Okay. Now, I believe I mentioned the sum of the interior angles with every class yesterday. That's looking at number 1 up there. The sum of the interior angles, this S stands for sum, which means the total. You take your number of sides, you subtract 2, you multiply by 180, that gives you your total. A pentagon, for number 1, has 5 sides. 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 times 180 is going to give you 540. Some of you, I bet you, circled C, 540. Not the right answer. Read really carefully. And on your test today, you're going to have several of these. And you need to look for these little key words. Each interior angle is very important. Okay, so you got a total of 540. This is a pentagon, a regular pentagon. So we need to take that total and split it up evenly amongst all the 5 interior angles. Okay, when you do that, you do get 108, which is your correct answer, which is B. Okay. On your test, look for these keywords, each interior angle. This little word "and" is very, very important. We're just talking about 1. If they tell you sum, that's when you want the big number. But if they say one of these, you got to do one step after that. You got to divide. Number 2, take a look. If you use that formula on number 2, you got it wrong. because number 2 is talking about what? Your keyword in number 2 is exterior. And what is true about the sum of the exterior angles in any polygon? This doesn't have a fancy formula. This is real easy, actually. Your sum of the exterior is just 360. Exterior goes with 360. So number 2, find the measure of an, look at that word, very important word, means 1. Find the measure of one exterior angle of a regular polygon with 20 sides, a 20gon. Well, if you just can remember that the sum of the exterior angles is 360, you got 20 sides, then just take 360 divided by 20, and that is going to give you, 18. Your answer is D for number 2. Okay. One more thing I want to throw in here. What do you remember is true about the interior angle in relation to the exterior angle? What does an interior angle and an exterior angle always form? It always falls together. These two angles here fall together to form this straight line. Okay, so here are two angles totaling this 180 right here. So if you happen to forget this fact, and you do go with the sum of the interior angles, you could go 20 minus 2 and then times 180. That's going to be 18 times 180. Let me grab a calculator. $3,240. Okay, we got 20 sides. Well, let's just do this. 3,240 divided by 20. I get 162. Now, this is not my exterior. Remember, this formula only goes with the sum of the interior. But what if you did know that, 162? Be real careful here. 162 is an answer on that answer key, and it's not the right answer. They're going to have all kinds of possibilities on there. You got to know what's asking for. We just found an interior. We want an exterior. So if we forgot this little fact, which I hope that you're not going to, but there are more than one ways to do this. My total 180, subtract off 162, you are left with 18 degrees, and there is your your measure of one exterior angle. All right, there's numbers 1 and 2. You do need to know something about interior for number 1, exterior. You will have more of those questions on your test today. You cannot use this sheet, so right there it is. You should have taken this home and studied it last night. You do need to use distance formula if you want to find the length. We're not going to do this completely together, but I want to mention one like number 4, number 5, number 6. You may need to use distance formula. If you ever want to find the length of something, the length on a coordinate plane, that corresponds with the distance in between the 2 points. Remember, distance formula has a minus in the middle of the parentheses, has a squared on both parentheses, plus right in the middle. Subtract your x's, subtract your y's, make sure you remember your squares. Do everything inside the square root first, and then let your square root be the last thing. Okay? You may need to use slope. If you want to prove something is parallel, then they should have the same slope. How do you get slope if you're on a graph? Graph it, and then do your rise over line. Okay? You will be able to use graph paper on this test, and please utilize it. If you have a question like number 11, which is determine whether it's a square, a rhombus, a rectangle, a parallelogram, say that all that apply, then you need to graph that thing and see if you can see from the graph what's going on. Okay? I will get down to number 11, and I will mention one little thing about it. Number 8, there's a good one where you can use your distance and your slope formulas to determine if it is a parallelogram. What do you got to determine if you want to check and see if it's a parallelogram? Well, let's just check the slope of the opposite sides and make sure they are the same. Rise over run, rise over run. Make sure they match. And then take a second and do the slopes of the other opposite sides. Do the rise over run, make sure they match. If they both match, that means they're both parallel. That's enough to say you got a parallelogram. All right, let's work number 9. Number 9 goes with this picture right here that they give you. This is a rectangle, and how do you know that? Read very carefully, and they say quadrilateral ABCD is a rectangle. Good information, so make sure you read carefully. Alright, so here's your rectangle. Number 9, if angle ADB, so go from A, go through D, end up at B. Which angle are we highlighting? Pay attention to that middle letter, D. Here's your vertex. This angle right here, 2y plus 40. And CDB, here's C. We're going to go through D. We're going to go up to B. Focus on that middle letter. Do you see the angle we're working with? Negative 3y plus 51. And then we want to find angle CDB. Alright, so take a look at what they give you. Now, here's what some of you are going to want to do. You're going to want to take this little angle right here and this little angle and set them equal to each other. Is it true in a rectangle that those angles equal each other? Not true in a rectangle. Okay, think about a really long, skinny rectangle. If you put the diagonals in there, you can clearly see these angles right here are not going to be the same. This is not true in a rectangle. Those are not congruent. That only happens in a rhombus and in the square. Alright, so what you're going to do then, don't set them equal to each other. What do you know about this angle and this angle? What can you say about them? What do you know about a rectangle? If you get stuck on here, just start writing stuff that you know about a rectangle. Here's one thing that everybody should know about a rectangle. All of your angles are 90 degrees. Take a look. Aren't those two angles making up that whole 90 degrees? For this problem, there's one of your angles. You're going to add this other angle. And then what is the total going to equal? What's the whole thing? Your total is 90 because it's a rectangle. So it's very important that you put these pieces of information on your picture. Put them on there. Okay. Let's solve this real quick. 2y, negative 3y is negative y. This gives me 91. I'm going to subtract 91 from both sides, and that's going to give me negative 1. And when I solve it for positive y, I'm going to get positive 1. Take a look at your answers. That answer is there, and it's not the right answer. Because, go back and reread always, what do they want you to find? CDB is represented by what? That's this piece right here. So let's take it and let's plug in our 1 that we found. And negative 3 times 1. And then right here, let's take negative 3 plus 51. And what do you end up with there? Looks like this person has the wrong answer. This can give you positive 48. That answer is A. Alright, let's talk about number 11, and then I will quickly talk about number 12, and you guys are going to get your test. Number 11. Now, I am going to give you graph paper. If you have some of your own, please use that. If you need to borrow some, you can. Use it. I'm going to rough sketch it up here to save a little time, and I don't have my active board on. But on your test, do yourself a favor and graph it out. Alright, real rough sketch here. Alright, so here's what I got. And we're asking ourselves, is it a square, is it a rectangle, is it a rhombus, is it all three? Well, it looks to be, this is kind of nice. If you're on an actual graph paper, you can see these are horizontal lines, and these are vertical lines, and that's really nice because you don't have to check the slopes. If you know these are horizontal, you know these are vertical, what does that definitely have to make these angles? They're definitely going to be 90. Those are perpendicular lines. Okay, that's good news. It's either a square or a rectangle, right, because we got all 90s. Well, what can we check to see if it's a square or not? Let's count the sides. Right here at B, we are down at a -1, and we move all the way up to a +6. So how many units is that? That is 7 units. And here we are at -2. And we move all the way over to -9, and that's also 7 units. Now, you can go through there if you're graphing it on a nice graph paper. You can just count your units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So, what did we just discover? 7 units is your length. 7 units is your width. So, that tells us this is a what? That tells us this is a square. If you put C, you got it wrong. And my answer key is not wrong on this one. Square by itself is not the right answer because it says list all that apply. Remember, squares, that little square, I'm the best. Remember that little song we listened to? Square takes every property from everything. It is a mix between rectangle and rhombus. So every square is a rectangle, every square is a rhombus. B is your correct answer. B is your correct answer. So if you come up with a square, be real careful how they word it. A square is a square, yes, but it's also considered to be, by definition, it fits rectangle, and it also fits all the properties of a rhombus. So you can list all of those. Okay. All right, last one, number 12. Now, I did not get to talk to you much about trapezoids in our trapezoid section. So, let's take a second, and I know I've been talking to you a lot here. It is worth your time to make sure you're catching this. And I will make this seem pretty easy if you're paying attention here. Number 12, for this trapezoid, A and B are the midpoints of the legs. Why is that important to you? Because if you guys will remember from that video that you watched of me the other day, this thing is called a median. And the median is literally the segment that's in the middle of your trapezoid. Okay, that word middle is going to help you. The measure, 31, has to be in the middle of your two bases. So your question on this one is asking you to find ML. Your median has to be that middle number. So take a look here. If your longest base down here is 34, how many units are there between that 34 and 31? Doesn't it take 3 to get from 31 to 34? Well, what does that mean? If 31, if I want it to be in the middle, well, I need to go 3 on the other side up here. So, how many, or excuse me, where am I going to be at if I take away 3 from this 31 to get my smaller base? Isn't that number going to give you 28? Check it. Is 31 right in the middle of 34 and 28? You can check it, and yes it is. So what's the answer for number 12? Your answer is 28, and that is answer C. Okay. Let me just do a little extra here. This one is not on your quiz. But what if they give you that this one up here is, I don't know, let's just say 15. And then I'm going to tell you that this one in the middle, the median, is 20. What does this one have to be? Do you know the answer?